You've seen the images, right? An earthquake, a massive flood, some terrible conflict. And the first thing you see is just chaos. But behind all of that, there's this huge international effort that kicks into gear. Today, we're going to pull back that curtain and see how it's all supposed to be organized. So let's get right to it. With all these different aid organizations rushing in, you have to wonder, who's actually in charge? Is there a master plan, or is it just a total free-for-all? And it's a critical question because, getting it right literally saves lives. And believe it or not, there is a playbook. The international community has a whole system designed to do just this, to bring some order to the chaos of a humanitarian crisis. It's called the cluster approach. And honestly, the idea is pretty simple. Just picture a big command center with different desks. You got the health desk, the shelter desk, a food desk, you name it. So all the different groups working on health, they all gather at the health cluster. And the whole point is to stop people from doing the same job twice, figure out where the gaps are, and just make the entire response way more efficient. Okay, but here's the twist. This system, this thing that was designed to solve problems, well, sometimes it creates a whole new set of them. And this is what our source material calls the authority of format. So what's the actual issue here? Well, the entire aid industry pretty much runs on standardized paperwork. Reports, funding proposals, assessments. And these formats help organizations get to work quickly, but they can also take a really complex, messy human crisis and try to squeeze it into a neat little box, basically hiding what's really going on. And check out this quote from a local aid worker in Somalia. It really says it all. Instead of the system adapting to what's happening locally, the local organizations find themselves changing what they do just to fit the cluster's paperwork. They're literally tailoring their life-saving work to fit a format. This whole thing leads to what one researcher calls a cookie-cutter mentality. The system tries to stamp the same solution, the same structure, everywhere it goes, no matter the context. But look, a crisis in Myanmar is not the same as a crisis in Zimbabwe. And this one-size-fits-all approach, it risks completely missing what people on the ground actually need. So you're probably thinking, okay, if this system is so rigid, why on earth do local aid groups even bother with it? Well, it turns out, even with all the headaches, there are some pretty big upsides. For these national NGOs, getting involved with the clusters is actually a huge leg up. It's a chance to network, for one. It gives them this sense of legitimacy that really helps with getting funding and dealing with the government. Plus, they get access to all sorts of new ideas and training. It helps them see the bigger picture of the whole emergency. And often, they build partnerships that last way beyond that initial crisis. But even with all those benefits, that ideal of a true partnership, it can be pretty hard to find. I mean, take this example from Zimbabwe. There's this high-level head of NGOs meeting where all the big decisions get made. But guess who gets an invitation? Yep, only the big international NGOs and the UN. The local groups, the ones with the deepest community ties, they're left out of the room. It just goes to show you where the real power still is. Now, to be fair, the people who designed the cluster system, they kind of saw this coming. They knew this power imbalance couldn't be a permanent thing. In fact, the entire system was built with an off-ramp. It was actually designed to disappear. And I'm not kidding, this isn't just some vague concept. It's written down. This document right here is the official rulebook from the IASC, that's the Interagency Standing Committee, on how to do a cluster transition. It's the literal playbook for how these international structures are supposed to hand over the keys and step away. So what is this cluster transition? Well, it's the official process of moving that coordination job from the international cluster system back to local groups, usually the government, and then shutting the cluster down for good. And the logic here is pretty straightforward. You activate a cluster when a country's own teams are just completely overwhelmed. And you're supposed to deactivate it when one of two things happens. Either the crisis gets a lot better or, and this is the important part, the national government and local groups are strong enough to take the lead again. And there's even a formal 5-step plan for making this handover happen. Step 1, you figure out what's going on. Step 2, you identify what kind of coordination will be needed down the road. 3, you get all the key local players involved. 4, you find the right people to take over. And finally, step 5, you create a detailed plan to make it all happen. It's a clear roadmap for handing back control. So, let's pull all these threads together. We've got a system that's designed for order but can be super rigid. And we've got an exit strategy that's supposed to hand power back to local experts. This really brings us to the heart of it all, this very uneasy partnership between a global system and the reality on the ground. And this really is the core tension, isn't it? The cluster system, with all its forms and its rules, was built to make disaster response predictable. But anyone who has ever seen a crisis knows they are the opposite of predictable. They demand flexibility, quick thinking, and local knowledge, the exact things a top-down system can really struggle with. Which brings us to this really sharp critique from researcher Antonio Donini. He says this kind of setup can be deceitfully participatory. I mean, wow. It looks like everyone's working together as equals, but in reality, it often just pushes Western ways of doing things, Western management, Western ideas of accountability, whether they actually fit or not. And that leaves us with this final, really challenging question. Can a system that is so built on formats and predictability ever really create the equal partnership that's so crucial for helping people effectively? It's a question the entire aid world is still trying to figure out. Something to think about.